I've always been of that mindset that if I got a position with a company or whatever I was doing, I wanted to be able to do that job to the best of my abilities, provide a great service and product for the pay that I was receiving, and wanted to make sure that they never wanted to see me leave. If they were smart enough to open the door for me, I wanted to make sure they regretted me walking out the door or leaving.
I'm Leon Davis, and this is One Good Question. Hello, and welcome to One Good Question. This is Leon Davis. I must apologize first for not having an episode out in the last couple of weeks. I got a new day job, and it has been taking up more time than I anticipated. So once again, I apologize for that. I plan on getting another episode out to you shortly after this one, and then returning to a regular posting schedule. I really look forward to getting back to a regular work-life balance. All right, so today's guest is Vince Vittatoe. Vince has been a really good friend of my family since I was a child and watched me grow up. Vince has worked in corporate America. He has also been a police officer with the Dallas Police Department, and now he works for himself as a consultant. Today we talk about the challenges both personally and professionally when making the transition from one to another. Vince and I had a really great conversation. I really enjoyed the opportunity to speak with him on this level. So let me go ahead and get you to Vince Vittatoe answering his one good question. I've known you for a little bit since I was a child, actually.
We go back a ways.
Yes, it's been a while. But what I really want to know right now is when you were transitioning from being a law enforcement officer to transitioning to life in the corporate sphere, and then now you own your own business. I want to know what are some of the biggest challenges you faced, both personally and professionally, and then how did you manage and overcome those challenges?
Well, thank you very much. And first of all, I'd like to give honor to God because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for his blessings upon me. So again, thank you very much. First of all, when we think about that, let's take a step back because even before I became a law enforcement officer, I was in the business world. So I had actually attended Hardin-Simmons University where I received my accounting degree. And when I came out of there, I went to work for State Farm Insurance in the accounting division where I was an accounting supervisor for State Farm Insurance overseeing the statistics unit. And that was a department. I had 12, 14 employees that worked for me. We did a lot of the agents' experiences, a lot of the reporting, and did a lot of the loss processing, so around catastrophes and that type. And so when I first entered the corporate world, I was 22 years old. I was young, and some of the first challenges that I experienced in that realm was that I all of a sudden now was thrust into a supervisory role, and I was supervising people that were more than twice my age, and how to be able to get into that work environment and create some credibility, if you will, for people that are doing things for much longer than I ever thought about. That was one of my first challenges when I entered the workplace. And so one of the first things I concentrated on is one, of course, learning the culture of the business and of the unit and of the division. So oftentimes we see and hear people come in and they just start throwing their ideas out there and trying to change this, that, and another. Thankfully, I took a step back, sat back and listened to some of the experienced people within the department, obviously taking their guidance and their experiences into consideration, and then obviously making a final decision in regards to what needed to be put in place and move on from there. So I guess you can say you kind of humble yourself in a way to be able to go in and listen first, understand fully what is going on before you come in and try to make changes and try to move things forward. Your employees typically will work as hard as you are. Well, maybe not always as hard as you are, but you want to set that example because so oftentimes over the course of my career, your employees are watching you. What type of tone are you setting in the workplace? And they kind of feed off of that. So that's one of the things that I've always prided myself in is having a good, strong work ethic, putting the time in, sometimes much to the detriment of my family. But again, you have a job, you want to make sure you do it right. And I've always been of that mindset that if I got a position with a company or whatever I was doing, I wanted to be able to do that job to the best of my abilities and wanted to make sure that they never wanted to see me leave. If they were smart enough to open the door for me, I wanted to make sure they regretted me walking out the door or leaving. So again, that was always my mindset around anything that I did in that realm. From there, I spent about 3 years with State Farm Insurance. And interesting enough, I had a desire to go into law enforcement. Actually, my desire was to go to the FBI. And so I thought, well, let me get some law enforcement experience here in locally, and it would help me transition. And so I applied, and I had actually just popped down there on a whim. And unfortunately, the city of Dallas had just lost another officer. And it was all over the news about the killing of this officer. And I just turned to my wife and said, oh, by the way, I went down and applied for the police department today. And she's like, you what? And I said, don't worry, I'll never get accepted, to the police department. And she said, don't be mistaken. So you're educated, you're very articulate, and you know how to be professional. So they're going to accept you. So within 2 or 3 weeks, I was accepted to the Dallas Police Department or Police Academy. And so I had a wonderful experience there, joining many other dedicated law enforcement professionals in our career, class 209 of the Dallas Police Department. So you go through the academy and the training that goes with that, and then all of a sudden you hit the streets. And when you're coming out of the academy, you get your assignments where you're going to go. And I was assigned to the Southeast Patrol Division, and that's one of the toughest divisions here in the city of Dallas. So I went out and obviously prayed for the covering of God on the streets of Dallas, because again, it is a totally new experience for me. I was very blessed to have my parents and living in an atmosphere that I never really understood the side of life of poverty, side of life of need. And because while we did not have a lot of money, my mom used what she had and was able to provide for us. I never really understood not having something, because she worked really hard and my dad worked really hard to provide for us. But I went to the streets of South Dallas, and it was really an eye-opening experience for me. And it really did open up my eyes to the world and to others, that aren't as blessed, I should say. And I'm not saying that everybody that lived in a certain area of town are not blessed. I'm just saying that there was a social economic environment there that I had never experienced. You heard about the projects. You only heard about this type of, people around fire barrels or seeing it on TV and stuff. And now I was working within that. And so I really had to learn what it meant to be in order to work the street. And so I was blessed with an incredible trainer named Dan Creeder. And Dan taught me everything I needed to know about law enforcement. He was my first phase trainer, and he was my ghost trainer at the end of my training cycle. Dan Creeder really taught me how to go from the professional world to learning how to be professional on the street, because that's a lot of the job, right? How to relate to the people that you are working with. What are the situations? Try to have some empathy and compassion for what they're experiencing. It's interesting that the people in the environment where I worked, they can size you up pretty quickly. And having been military, I was always raised, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, those type of things. And some of the residents in the area were very respectful of that, and they took it. Others, you needed to take it to a different level. I'll just say, you had to take it to a different level to be able to manage those situations. So, I learned to be able to take control of situations and manage situations. And so it's interesting that over the years that we run into crisis situations on the streets of Dallas, whatever the case is. For me, I can speak specifically to myself, is that in challenging situations or when all the chaos is going on, it just slows down for me. I mean, it's just like you're in your world, you're in your element, when this stuff is going on, because all of a sudden you know exactly what you need to do, because that training kicks in and what actions you need to take. So that was a very definitive time in my career, because I was able to learn a career path that's going to ultimately take me back to the corporate world. So that was my law enforcement experience. And I spent about 9 years with the city of Dallas, working in various roles from a patrol officer. I worked in the deployment unit, where we worked plain clothes and worked the streets of Dallas. And I'll tell you an interesting story, and I laugh about it now, and I still get ribbing from some of the officers I used to work with in our deployment unit. So they said, well, we need to start buying narcotics or start buying drugs, start making cases on the street level. And so Detective Anthony Wynn, who's now retired from the Dallas Police Department, and I partnered up. Anthony grew up in Oak Cliff, and so we're driving around, and Anthony would go in. He's making these buys like crazy, making cases like crazy. And so we drove up to one location. I said, Anthony, I got this. I walk in. I said, excuse me, I'd like to get a dime. They looked me up and down and said, nah, So I walked out and got back in the car, like, did you make the buy? And I was like, no. And so we get back to the police station, and the other officers in the unit, they're like, Vittatoe, you're probably the only African-American black guy that cannot buy drugs in South Dallas.
Probably not the only one. They probably wouldn't sell to me either.
So I always found that to be a very humorous story, because no, it's certainly not what I do, and anything that I partook in, absolutely. So anyway, I had a wonderful career at the Dallas Police Department. Great officers that I worked with. I really loved so many that I could name. I decided at that point in time that I needed to make a career change and to get back into the professional world. Or into the business world, excuse me. So I started looking around, and I was led to a company. It was Accord North America. I talked to a gentleman who was a VP of Safety and Security named Victor Glover, and expressed my desire to take my business background as well as my law enforcement background, mirror that or combine that, and get into the safety and security world. So Victor was very open, and he said, Vince, I do not have a position at this point in time, but if you get in the door, once this gentleman who's in the role is about to retire, once he retires, I'd love to bring you over to the department. So I did that. I honed myself, and I thought, well, Vince, this is not your ultimate goal, but, come on in. I actually knew nothing about hotels, right? So actually, in hindsight, it was the best year that I could spend learning the operations of the hotels, because I was an area manager for the company, and I oversaw 12, 14 hotels, worked with wonderful operators and supervisors, SVPs, in learning the hospitality world and what that was all about. So it only helped me when I moved to the corporate office into the safety and security role, that I knew how operations was supposed to work, and so that I would not get, quote, taken advantage of by general managers when I went to the locations and did that. So once I re-entered the business world, that's when I think some of the challenges really started to set in. I had long hours. I traveled every day through the weekends at times, so I had no work-life balance. And for that, my personal life suffered, and, you're away, and in hindsight, you realize, how could I have done that better? How can I have structured my time and set myself in a role instead of just giving everything to a job at the detriment of my family to, be successful in the business world when I failed in my personal life? And so I've taken that experience and tried to learn from it at creating a work-life balance. And I think that as we see the millennials and the younger generation coming to the workplace, we see a lot of that. I'm of the baby boomer age, and we were taught you work, 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 work. And you see the younger generation coming in and say, hey, I want to have a life as well as a job experience, and having that balance between the two. And in reflection, that is something that I think we all need to have. And I wish that I had a little bit more of that back then, but I did not. I fully engulfed myself in my work experience, and my family suffered through that. So from that point, I have learned, in this work environment today, and even into my own business and such, that I need to set time aside, right, for myself, my family, and recharge myself, actually, in that vein as well. So, and also the other aspect from going back from law enforcement to the business world, and I think it's another area that some law enforcement officers have a challenge with, is that in law enforcement, we were taught, this is black and white. This is the only way it's going to be, and this is the way it is. And when you go into the business world, that is not necessarily the case, right? We need to learn, as law enforcement or former law enforcement going into the business world, that we are actually, or as I like to say about myself, is that I am a businessman with an expertise in security and loss prevention. and learning to communicate with them or your business partners from a business point of view, not just a law enforcement point of view. When we dealt with challenging locations in the hospitality world, yes, it would be very easy for me to solve the problems of that hotel, but I basically shut it down, right, when I do that, because I put measures in place that are so restrictive that you cannot operate. And so you need to be able to meet that happy median and meet what the operators need to be successful and safe and secure, as well as protect the property and your guests from that venue, but also an environment where they can continue to make money and those create a partnership in that way. And so that was something that Victor was very helpful in, how to develop that from that law enforcement mindset into the business world and help mirror that, because again, that's the only way you can be successful, when you realize that ultimately you're working in a business and it's not law enforcement per se, right? I mean, obviously we have responsibilities from a security and loss prevention role, but it's not, quote, say, police work in that manner. So I was blessed to be there for 10 years under the tutelage of Victor Glover, and I did not necessarily want to leave that business. I was always looking for advancement opportunities, obviously. I think we all want to grow and such like that. And at the time, Accord North America had a number of brands underneath the umbrella. And Victor Glover, through the 10 years that I worked for him, he was not only a boss, but he was a life coach in a way. I think that everybody in life should have people that they can turn to, not just as for guidance and information. And I found that in a former boss of mine, right? So again, he was my boss, but we would spend hours talking about life and talking about how to be successful, what you needed to do. And I was never great at that time of putting money in the 401k or doing this, that, and other. And he explained why you need to do this and all that stuff for planning and all the other things that you're going to encounter in life. So it's great to find somebody that you can turn to that not only sees you as an employee, but sees you and cares enough about you to share their wealth of information, their knowledge, and their tutelage to be able to help you grow personally, professionally, and as being, a man raising a family and those type of things as well. So again, I have been blessed to continue my friendship and relationship with Victor through the years, and will never let that go. So. And then, of course, effective communications is key as well. I think that we all have, you hear that phrase, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, and fully understanding and listening to what people are saying. I had gotten to a point in the hospitality world where I would, someone would say 5 or 10 words to me about a situation. I got the answer, and I'll, say, I don't need to hear anything else. This is what you got to do, and learning how to sit back and listen to what the full problem is and respond in that way is so important. Probably still fall short of that oftentimes with my wife now. She'll start saying something, and boy, I'm quick to answer. And so I sometimes have to check myself and allow her to complete her thought or her direction. And so it's forever a learning experience, or kind of keep our mind on that at all times. So anyway, I was blessed again to be able to, when they spun off the Red Roof Inn brand, Victor and I spoke about the opportunity to move out from Accord North America to go head up that operation, and so I did. I left the company at that time, went and headed up the safety and security department for Red Roof Inns, and did that for about another 3 years, and then left there and struck out and started a security and loss prevention department for Bob Evans Restaurants. And that took me to the restaurant industry. And it was a wonderful experience because it allowed me to get out of my comfort zone. I think that we so oftentimes in our career get in a comfort zone. We can do stuff in our sleep and not even think about it any longer. And so this opportunity allowed me to be able to get out of my, let's say, I'm going to say right from the standpoint of I could almost do it in my sleep to, a whole new world of really what's the problem, what's the challenge, and be able to put things in place moving forward without it just being automatic. And so that was a great experience with Bob Evans, and that took me to Ohio for a few years. And some of the initial challenges that I had there at Bob Evans is that this company there was a company that had been in place for well over 60 years, and they had never had a security or loss prevention department. Everybody was used to doing everything their way and the best of their abilities, and then you come in and with an expertise in a certain field, and getting the people that have been career people, they're 30 years or whatever, and all of a sudden saying, you don't have the responsibility for that any longer, and this is my world or whatever the case is. And being able to do that in a manner that doesn't step on toes is always a challenge. From a corporate standpoint, when I was in the corporate office, one of the cases, I never liked to just be that person in the office. I felt that you need to be out in the field because that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where let's say the money is made for the corporate office. I had to go out and foster relationships. And so I think that sometimes in the business world, that is lost. And so some people just get in the corporate office and sit in their office and think that the field should know that they're there to support them. And no, they don't just should know. My belief is that you have a responsibility to introduce yourself to the field, make sure that you are making yourself available to them for any of their questions, and they will call you when they know you. If they have seen me, heard me, I visited the locations and such, the likelihood of them picking up the phone and calling me or emailing me is tremendously higher, other than just being a name on a piece of paper at the corporate office. Spent some wonderful time with Bob Evans and came back to Dallas and was re-partnered with Victor Glover at G6 Hospitality for about another year or so, or a few months, I'm sorry. And in 2008, I decided that, Vince, you had 9 years of law enforcement experience and 21 years of corporate safety and security experience. What's next? And so decided to go ahead and start my own security consulting business. And let me tell you, that was another eye-opening experience, because I initially went into that field thinking, well, Vince, you got all these relationships, you got all these partnerships, you've been president of this restaurant law association and chairman of this hotel association, you're going to have all this business coming to you, etc. And when I went into business myself, that is not the case. That is not what happened, because as I sat back and thought about it, Vince, all the partnerships you had, these were the heads of companies already. They have a division and a partnership already and people that work in those fields. So you have to go out and do it on your own. So going out on my own in business, I was dealing with so many other avenues. First of all, I was dealing with the mental part of it, because somewhere in the back of my mind, I became my own worst enemy in that I felt, why do you think you can own a business? Why do you think you can be successful at a business? So I had to battle that challenge. And so I was my own worst enemy. And so I had to delve into books and change my mindset. And that all comes after a whole lot of prayer. I have to say, I've been on my knees praying tremendously for the right direction, etc., but also finding books to read and listen to, and partnering with some incredible business coaches and such as well to be successful. So, I mean, some of the books I've read, and I'm reading one right now, which is Coach Wooden's Forgotten Teams, an incredible book talking about his pyramid of success and just the humility that he had in regards to his teaching abilities and where he directed focus. And so many other different books that I've read to help change that mindset. I've partnered with a gentleman, Doug Crawford, as a business coach who has helped provide some guidance in that way as well, to help me be successful. Because again, we're in the weeds, right? I'm a consulting business that has one person, me, myself, and I. And while I can partner with other folks in regards to projects and such like that, my business is solo right now. So then all of a sudden I was thrust into, you got to do the finance, you got to do the marketing, you have to do the website, you have to do the networking, and there's only so much time. And, networking is continual. Be a part of this committee, that group, and everything like that. And so the time commitments are tremendous. And working with Doug, he's helped me, and don't get me wrong, I have not been the best student, let me say, in regards to following everything he says and directs me to, whatever. He's been very patient with me, and he's been a blessing to me in every way. But to try to set aside prime time and focus on different areas in the business that you want and need to focus on and such. So that has been a continual challenge for me, and I have it on my calendar every day, and I find myself getting sidetracked and doing other things, whatever the case is. But when I focus on what he's told me, I see progress. So I always have to go back and think, Vince, get back to where you need to get to and everything like that. So here I am today. I need to get back to that, I have that time set, blocked, and not letting anything impede on that time. So it's a new year, so we got the
Yes.
all start off anew again, and here we are again, doing that thing again. So having my own business has been very encouraging. I know that we are on the upside. This is going to be an incredible year for our business. Where we're looking to go. As you know, from my background, our business focuses primarily on the hospitality and restaurant field as far as security loss prevention efforts. However, do provide a lot of support to other areas as well, from schools, churches, plants. I mean, whatever the environment, we can provide support to them as well. So those have been some of the biggest challenges that I've had in my career. I just passed my 2-year mark with my own business, and it's been a challenging 2 years, but I'm starting to see a little light at the end of the tunnel. And if I can continue to keep in mind what some of my mentors over the time has been to help me move forward, I'll continue to see success. So, from Victor Glover to Doug Crawford, and another colleague that I do not want to fail to mention is Ann Sullivan. She is a phenomenal consultant in California, has an incredible business, Eye on Your Brand. She was a former VP there at CKE. And, it's a collaboration, right? I mean, collaborating with professionals in your field cannot be minimized. I hold a weekly call with her. Just having someone that you can bounce ideas off is a tremendous resource to you, because you don't know everything. They have experiences you don't have and can help provide guidance that helps save you time as well. So, again, I want to make sure I call her out, because she's a fabulous partner and has helped me tremendously in my 2 years of being in business as well. So
I saw a consistent theme throughout all your steps. There seems to be a big servant leadership type theme. From your insurance, you were talking about your team, how to serve your team better. You talked about the community when you were the police, your guests and internal clients when you were with Red Finn, report to your field teams, Bob Evans, and like every step you were talking about service. I don't know if you realized that, but that was
no, I did not,
but looking at it and listening to you, and it's really good stuff. You're the first person I've talked to talk to that element of your journey, which is really cool. So.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you. And it's interesting you say that, because I hadn't really thought about it, but actually Doug Crawford had brought that to my attention as well. And I forgot until you just said that. That's what he said. He said, you are a servant in protection and security and that type of thing. And so continue that even today.
All right. Well, awesome. All right, Vince. So let's go ahead and get to the house question. Go ahead and tell me about one piece of advice that you've received, then you didn't take, but looking back, you wish you would have taken the first time.
Well, again, that's another very good question. And there's several different opportunities through my career that I've had that opportunity. You get the advice and you leave it. And so I'm going to split that into two, if you don't mind, because there's two different areas that kind of stood out in my mind.
Yeah, no problem.
About that. And first of all, the first one was I received some advice from a friend of mine. He's the head of Cardinal Health Security Team, Greg Halvax. We go back 30 years, and he has had a very successful career in the security world, having gone from Frito-Lay and some other different companies. And he was always telling me, Vince, you need to change companies, continue to grow in that way. And as I mentioned a little earlier on our call, is that you get comfortable. And I was very comfortable with hospitality. And not that I was looking necessarily to go outside of that world, but for the longest time, every time we visited, he said, have you considered this, that, or another? And I never did, out of fear, right? Out of fear of going out, something that was unknown. And so as I finally took that step and left hospitality, went into the restaurant world, which is still safety security in that world, but it was a different part of that world. It really made me realize, yes, Vince, you should, or you can be successful in other areas as well, right? But it also helped me to grow and come in contact with a lot of other wonderful professionals, help grow my footprint as well, because that opportunity gave me the opportunity to flush out my professional acumen. This experience with Bob Evans, again, they were a 60-year-old company that had never had security loss prevention. So I was able to go in and help develop a security plan and structure for a new corporate office. I was able to go and have responsibility for transportation, for manufacturing facilities, for restaurants, for distribution centers. I mean, again, it just gave me a lot bigger footprint in regards to what my professional acumen was. So again, I did ultimately take that experience, but it took me probably 10, 15 years to get there, and so I wish I had done it so much sooner. And so that's why I kind of throw that one out there. But the other piece of advice that I got that I ignored and actually came back around was fiscal responsibility. And I say that from the standpoint of, one, I heard it from my mom being in the church, about tithing and giving back to God, because we know all of our blessings come from God, and giving back to Him accordingly. So that was one side of it, but also fiscal responsibility from living within your means and not getting yourself in trouble. And I mentioned that a little earlier about Victor and his coaching in regards to fiscal responsibility and that type of thing. And while I began to work on that, could I have done better? Yes, I could have. I think that we all go through different things through life, and while I've been blessed, then you hit that rainy day. You have that rainy day period, right? And that rainy day for us, had several rainy days, let's put it that way. But, transitioning from the corporate world into my own business, there's no income until you start getting some clients and such. And so I was blessed that I had some resources that I could draw on because I was able to do those things. But you think back to if I had taken advice all those years ago and been fiscally smart and responsible, it would not have been as detrimental of a period as we encountered. Because it not only challenges you from the added stress of financial wherewithal, but also the financial stress that adds to your family and worry and such like that. And so there's so many different areas that suffer because if I had just taken money that I blew in bars back in the day or whatever, going out to nightclubs and all, going out and eating all the time and all the things that we did, if I just took that money and set it aside and, did something smart with it instead of just blowing it, or exercising delayed gratification, working for something instead of just spontaneously just buying it all the time, and those type of things, and charge it, not paying attention to the interest rates on the credit cards and all the other type of things, and then ultimately you finding you're spending another $300 to $500 on a credit card each month just on interest charges, and so you never get out of debt. You never get out of debt when that's happening because your payment is being eaten up with interest charges. And so all of a sudden now you never get out of that cycle. And so that is my advice that I received that I didn't pay attention to, that ultimately you come back around to, because again, it is huge. And I am at a mature part of my life. I'm not going to tell you how old I am.
Okay, that's fair.
Mature part of my life. And you can say, okay, I got it, but now you got to make up for all that lost ground, right? And so my advice to anybody listening to this podcast today, if I were to give you some advice, start while you're young being fiscally responsible, and being smart. Save your money, not necessarily save your money. Make sure your money's working for you, right? Make sure it's working for you. Tithe and pay yourself first. So you tithe, pay yourself first, and then pay your bills. And you always have some money for a rainy day. And you also return to God what He's blessed you with as well. So that would be my advice in that vein.
All right, man. Thanks. That's two really good pieces of advice there. Both that I've encountered both of those, as a matter of fact. So, but yeah, those are both two really good examples. So I definitely appreciate that. So I want to thank you for your time today. Thank you for joining us. Did you want to take a little time and tell us a little bit more about what you're doing with your business?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so very much. And as I mentioned, been just past that 2-year mark on January 4th, the Vittatoe Consulting. We are a security and loss prevention consulting firm, an independent firm. So we are not tied to any vendors and such, so that when we work with our clients, we can give them the best solution. Working with multiple vendors to be able to provide them the best vendor solution to their issues. In my firm, we are able to help you with security assessments and reviews, loss prevention training. We can help you with workplace violence training and tip shooter training. We help provide services for churches and schools, all restaurants and hospitality, obviously, from that world as far as security and loss prevention, helping set up security. We are not a security company. I don't want to confuse you with providing security guards. While I can help collaborate with the clients regards to helping setting up protocol, we take the director level, VP level view of your business and help set your businesses up with established protocols. So, what are your needs? We conduct security assessments, identify those gaps and opportunities, and help flesh out a plan to help accomplish what the goals need to be to help secure your people, your property, and your profits. So that's the way we work that, providing a solution to the businesses. From the hospitality world, we can assist with nuisance abatement issues. We see that the city throw a lot of that responsibility back on hotels now on dealing with nuisance situations. And the unfortunate side of that is that hospitality people are about putting heads in bed. They're not about dealing with the challenging situations that come along with that. So that's where we can help support a lot of hotels in that vein, because that's a big item for law enforcement now, is to push all that responsibility back, saying you have too many calls for service or whatever the case is. And so businesses are like, well, what do we do? And so that's where we come in. We can help hospitality in that world, hotels in that world, to deal with that. So that's what we do primarily: security, loss prevention, security assessments, loss prevention, and training. Again, we are here to help you. Our website's www.vittatoeconsulting.com.
Once again, thank you very much for your time. This was excellent. I appreciate it. And I look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you very much, Leon. Have a wonderful day.
Once again, that was Vince Vittatoe answering his one good question. I would like to thank Vince for his time. As a quick reminder, I am planning on dropping another episode within the next 3 to 5 days. I am looking at getting back to a healthy work-life balance. That was actually one of the parts that really hit me hard while editing this. So I look forward to getting back with you and interacting with you all on social media. Thank you for sticking with me, and I look forward to talking to you again. Thank you. Thank you for listening to One Good Question. I'm Leon Davis. Theme music by DJ Seth Lowry. Find us on Spotify and Apple Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts. For a full list of where to find us, check out our Facebook page or click the link in the show notes.